from Lawrence Stroll. As slightly rumored, Adrian Newey will be joining us first and foremost as a shareholder and our technical manager of our Formula One team. The man with 25 world championships to his name is now a member of Aston Martin, and this has been rumored for weeks and months. And there were conversations with Maranello, there were conversations with McLaren and Williams, but Adrian Newey, who has worked quite closely with Aston Martin before when they were a sponsor of Red Bull, helped design one of their road cars, is officially a part of the Aston Martin family. They just moved into that new factory last Monday, so everything's brand new and shiny. And what a jewel in Lawrence Stroll's crown, Tim. Like, this is let's start with the Lawrence Stroll angle, because I know everybody wants to talk Adrian Newey angle, but man, for an owner to do this and be up on stage with a microphone, that's a pretty big deal.
That's huge. I mean, obviously Lawrence spearheading this entire thing, Adam. It's a big get, right? Like I compare it to, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. It's huge news. It's huge news in Formula One. Like this is the guy who wins. You get him on your team and you win. That's just what happens. Those are the facts. But I mean, for Lawrence to pull this off, I mean, it's his whole vision, right? I mean, he's just once you get to meet him, like he's very like he brings you in and you buy in and you see what that vision is, and that's exactly what's happened here with Adrian Newey. I mean, it's not so much to do with money, Adam, it's more to do with this long-term project that they've got here. This is a huge day for that team. And then obviously being Canadian owned, I think a little part of it is a big day for Canadians as well.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about that later in the show, because I do think that it's a major part of this that I don't even think the media in this country, which is becoming sparser and sparser by the day anyway, have really taken ownership of, but we have, and we will continue to, because I think it's a point of pride for Canadians. Now, a couple other notable quotes from Lawrence Stroll about Adrian Newey. Adrian is arguably the greatest in the world at what he does. Gentleman, winner, competitor. And he said, I believe when things are meant to happen, they will happen. He shared my passion, intent, and vision. And he shared also that they'd had conversations going back a couple years, not anything serious, but, people in the paddock talk. They always talk, well, what would you think? Well, maybe one day we'll get you. You know what I mean? Like, no tampering, but it's like, yeah, it's a little bit of, wouldn't it be cool? Would be sure interesting. And what I loved, my favorite moment of the whole press conference was Adrian's sharing that he and Lawrence keep running into each other at the gym in the Far East and the Middle East, which I thought was hilarious. For Adrian Newey, Tim, it's been rumored a £100 million deal or whatever. From what I've heard from Sky Sports, it was £20 million per year that could go up to $30 million if they win championships and cross certain thresholds. And he is a shareholder in this team, which did any other team offer Adrian Newey part ownership?
Not to my knowledge, no. It's rumored that Ferrari, although turned down, obviously by Adrian Newey, but turned down like numerous times, apparently. And same with McLaren as well. And it wasn't the fact that, those two teams in particular could have offered him, the same amount. So the deal is over a 6 year, it goes over 6 years, and ranges from, it's around 20 million pounds. So 25 million USD per year. And then obviously he has the shareholder agreement as well that's in there at the same time. And I think, Adam, like turning down the likes of Ferrari, McLaren, teams
Williams
that can, Williams as well, but teams that were going to go above and beyond what, Lawrence was offering or the team was offering. That says a lot about what they're doing at Aston Martin, right? It says a lot about that project. It says a lot about how much infrastructure they've put into the team. And I think it also says a lot about ownership. And then also on top of that, it says a lot about the individuals who work at that team, which I think is one of the reasons why Newey wanted to go there and sort of start fresh with this project,
Hmm.
because there's other aspects to this agreement, that hasn't really been pointed out. The fact that, you've got Enrico Cardile coming over from Ferrari, who Lawrence um, really, was aggressive to try and get that guy in particular away from Ferrari and over onto his team. And then also on top of all that, you have to take a look at some of the other folks that were involved over the past few months, coming over to Aston Martin. I think Andy Cowell as well. Like, that's a huge name that we're not talking about that we probably should. Like, when you have Martin Whitmarsh stepping down as president of Aston Martin F1 team, and then Lawrence goes out and takes a huge swing and gets Andy Cowell to come over to the team to be president. That's a huge get. I mean, there was a ton of teams in the paddock who were trying to get Andy Cowell onto their teams. So for those who don't know, Andy Cowell was a huge part of Mercedes' championship winning years. He was a huge part of their 6 consecutive constructors championships at that team. He played a critical role in just making sure that that team won as much as they did. So, Adam,
Hmm.
I mean, when we take a look at the team personnel itself, that was a huge deal for Adrian Newey as well.
And Tim, Adrian was so great when he's on stage because everybody's hanging on his every word, and he's just such a normal guy about it. I love watching him because soft spoken and seems to be humble. And he was talking about, okay, I decided somewhere in April that I wanted to change, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to sail around the world. And I talked to my wife, and Eddie Jordan on his podcast has been saying he might want to just sail around the world. That's what he's been saying all summer. I'm assuming that so there's rumors that it was Suzuka where he kind of started to make that decision, but I don't know the specific race. Do you have any idea when that decision was finally made?
Yeah, his decision made around Suzuka. Like, it was just after the race that he decided that he was going to move on from Red Bull. But when he decided to leave, because I'd gotten that news as soon as it broke and jumped all over that. And that happened, I think it was about like an hour before my flight to Miami, because we were going to cover the Miami Grand Prix for TSN. And, we had a feeling that something was coming. And sure enough, like just before we boarded, I got that news and, sent it out there. And then getting to the paddock in Miami, I mean, for the first few days, Adam, the whole conversation was about Adrian Newey. Where is he going next? What's he doing next? Everybody's saying Ferrari. He's going to Ferrari. I even thought he was probably going to end up at Ferrari as well, just because of not only their technological infrastructure, but also working with Lewis Hamilton, being something that he's always wanted to do. But for him, all he wanted to do is take a bit of time off and then revisit things. Getting a tour of the Aston Martin factory back in June, I think, was one of the moments that kind of sealed this whole thing up for him, was just seeing exactly what everything was going on at Aston Martin. But I mean, the Red Bull side of things, Adam, like, I think for him, it was just getting too stale and not really going through the motions every day, getting up, doing the same thing wasn't of interest to him. He was losing interest in the fact that, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go do this and I got to do this, and it's going to be the same thing over and over. And he'd been doing it for so long, I think he just lost interest in doing it. And then all the politics that were surrounding the team as well, Adam, I think that was also.
I do want to stop you there. You think that was a real factor? The Christian Horner and the and Helmut Marko and Jos Verstappen. There's been a lot of turmoil, right? There really has. Red Bull Global has had the Mateschitz family, and then of course the Thai end of it. And forgive me, I forget their last name, but there's been they've been at loggerheads from rumored anyway from time to time. Do you think all of that kind of contributed?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I think just from his standpoint, though, Adam, it was doing something new, doing something different and maybe not doing it with the best team on the grid, but doing it with a team that's got a ton of potential in it was something of interest to him. Because if you're already joining something that's already, the wheels are in motion, things are going, things are working, you're kind of just a small little cog in a bigger wheel, and you may not have as much say and power as you would like. Where going to Aston Martin, you're kind of the one who oversees the entire project of the car design and everything else technically. And for him, that was just a brand new thing. It was different, right? He's doing more with his time than I think what he was doing with Red Bull.
Did you see anything in there that felt a little bit different? I mean, obviously you've spoken to Adrian in the past, and you've had, you obviously are well connected within the paddock itself. And did you see something in his body language? Did you see excitement? Did you see anything with Adrian Newey that was a little bit different from perhaps the guy you've maybe, met a few times over the last few years?
Yeah, I would say like he seems like very excited, and he's as you see him now, that's probably as excited as you're going to see him. He's very, he's a toned down guy, right? That's just, this is the way he is. And I guess conservative, you would say, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think for him, like, this is, you can just see it in his eyes. Like, he is excited to get to work on this thing, even though he's 65. He's probably going to be, I mean, he could go just over his 70s, maybe. I mean, this deal will take him over his 70s for sure. So I think for him, it's just having that new challenge, and like a bigger challenge, because this is a very big challenge for him, and trying to keep his winning record intact, right, Adam? Like, it's like, that's a huge resume this guy's got. And I don't think, joining this team, it's something that he doesn't want to leave Formula One on a bad note, right? He doesn't want to retire from F1 he wants to retire from F1 on a high. So.
Yeah, no kidding. And with a great opportunity to do it. One of the things that I thought he mentioned, and I thought this really kind of stood out to me, they asked him right off the top, what's the biggest factor in you coming to Aston Martin? And he said, Lawrence, that's easy. And he said, he also said, I felt I needed a new challenge towards the end of April. And he said, Lawrence and I bump into each other at the gym. But he mentioned that Lawrence is really the only owner that is actively involved with the team in the entire sport. And I want to context this for people who are like, why does that matter? Or Lawrence has, depending upon your perception of him, I happen to really appreciate people like Lawrence who are extremely focused and results driven like that, because you kind of know where you stand with them, right? They're no bullshit, like, let's get to it. I think for a lot of people, some of the people maybe that have left the team over the last 5 years, that's maybe not the style that works for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, Adrian, when he started out of school, it was with the Fittipaldi F1 team before it went into receivership in the early 80s. They were obviously very involved. The Leighton House F1 team in the late 80s, when he got back into F1 out of IndyCar, their owners were very involved. Worked with Williams in the early 90s. Obviously Frank Williams, extremely involved in the team. Sir Frank Williams. And then Ron Dennis, the owner of McLaren, very involved in McLaren in the late 90s and early 2000s during the Hakkinen era. And I think that's something that Adrian probably resonates with him, that the owners care that much. Why do you think that is, though, Tim?
Because they're just the involvement, right? I think the thing with motorsports is, and I can't compare it to other sports in this way, but I can say that having your owner have full buy-in to an F1 program or a racing program is extremely important, and it allows you to understand that they have the same passion for motorsports that you do. So if ever they lose interest, which never usually happens, you'll know about it, right? But with an owner who's heavily passionate about motorsports, they rarely ever lose interest, and they're always heavily involved, and they always want to see this thing grow. I always kind of think of, like, Mark Cuban with, the Dallas Mavericks, right? Like,
Jerry
That
Jones
guy,
with the Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys as well.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't be the GM of the Dallas Cowboys.
No, no. No, I think that's fair. But, they are still the most valuable franchise in North American professional sports.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They or the Yankees,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I'm just basically saying that having an owner who's very passionate about the sport, passionate about the sport is extremely important. And I think if you can get on board with that as anyone, I mean, actually shouldn't. So here's the thing: when you're getting involved in racing, you always want to make sure that whoever's with you or whoever you are working for loves the sport as much as you do.
Yes.
Because then, they're in it for the long haul. You know that everything is going to be stable as best as they can make it, and you're going to get their best as well because they love the sport so much. There's so much passion for racing, and to have an owner like Lawrence Stroll, who's always wanted to be in Formula One, he's always wanted to own a Formula One team as well. I mean, seeing him and what he has done. Like even back to the Schumacher days, right? Like he was a part of Ferrari back then with, he helped bring in Tommy Hilfiger to the team. There's a number of different things as Lawrence has done inside Formula One because he's always wanted to be a part of it. So owning his own team only makes sense.
Well, and people don't, I don't think people don't know that though, Tim. Like, can you give me a little bit of a, because I think people go, oh, rich guy bought team, put son in car. That's what they think. So, and I know that drives you crazy. Let's talk about Lawrence Stroll's resume in Formula One a little bit. Can you give us a little bit of background on that before?
Well, he used to race too, Adam? Like Lawrence used to be, he raced in Ferrari Challenge. Like there's a bunch of other little series that he's raced in as well. He's always been passionate about Formula One. He's always wanted to own a team. Even not really thinking too much about having his son in Formula One, mostly thinking about having an F1 team or being a part of one because he loves it. He's super passionate about it. But if he can see an angle where he can also turn this thing into an incredible business, which we're going to probably get into here in a minute.
We are.
That makes sense to him, right? And so, he would be doing this one way or another.
Right. And he's, obviously invested in Williams at one point. And this is a guy who's been slowly growing a mover and shaker for 25 years, at least in this sport. And I think that part of it, I think, is the context that's missing because, in Formula One, we talk about just the drivers, right? Because the drivers are the ones in the car. They're the ones we identify with. And, we would be lying if we said there aren't a lot of new Formula One fans who are not familiar with the history. Maybe they know Schumacher's name, maybe they know Senna's name, but they maybe don't know the inner workings. And, frankly, that's kind of true across sports. It's here today, gone tomorrow. But this is a guy that's been around a long, long, long time. Now,
yes.
Just on the Newey thing for a couple of more things, and then I want to turn to the business end of this. What's interesting about Newey is he's now a shareholder and a partner in this. And he has designed road cars for Aston Martin before when they were partnered with Red Bull. Now, so there's that history there. I also thought it was really interesting, and I know we've sort of mentioned this before, but I would like to do a deeper dive here. The engine that has won the last 3 world championships is Honda, engine power unit. And Adrian's really familiar with that group. And so, Aston Martin moving to Honda engines is, I think this is sort of a perfect fit. Like if he was going to Ferrari, you'd have to learn the Ferrari way. If he's going to Mercedes, he's got to learn the Mercedes way. Or even if he's going to McLaren or Williams, still has to learn the Mercedes thing. Yeah. It's a really interesting wrinkle. And it is interesting too that, they right now, as of this recording, and maybe at the end of the year that changes, Honda is the defending champion power unit.
Yep. He has a close working relationship with Honda as well. I think that's something to him that, I think he really enjoyed. I think he really enjoyed working with Honda during that time at Red Bull, and now getting that opportunity again to do the same thing in 2026 only makes sense because, you're going to be working with some of the same people you were back when they were providing power units for Red Bull Racing. And I think also on top of all that, Adam, Aston Martin being a works team for 2026 is huge. I mean, for those who don't know, works team is very important to have in Formula One. Mercedes is obviously a works team, so is Ferrari, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you can have your your racing team partner up with an OEM or an engine manufacturer like Honda, I mean, that is massive, because you're going to be able now to design your car closer to whatever they are thinking their engine's going to be, what size, what dimensions. So for a guy like Adrian Newey and whoever the team is going to be underneath him is going to be communicating heavily with Honda so they can adjust and make adjustments to their car to make things work, go faster, have the suspension aerodynamics working in conjunction with each other. Because sometimes, Adam, like when you see Aston Martin right now buying their engines from Mercedes, buying their gearbox from Mercedes, the rear end, you're designing around whatever they're doing.
Right.
And that's an issue. Now you get to set the terms on how you want to design everything. And so that's extremely important. And I think also for Adrian Newey, that was extremely important as well.
I sit here and I wonder about this because, one of the things that Martin Brundle said on Sky Sports this morning that I thought was fascinating was like, it's not just Adrian Newey himself and obviously the ROI of when you make an investment in a person, the return on investment you expect to be, X amount times that, right? So Adrian Newey obviously has sparked the business end of this, and we can get to that. But it makes me think that the signing of Fernando Alonso is probably the biggest turning point in the history of this team, because I wonder if Aston Martin would have been as exciting for Adrian Newey if Fernando wasn't there. Not just because Fernando's a great driver, but because Fernando also chose them. So they must have something going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's never it's not a secret, right, that Adrian's always wanted to work with Fernando Alonso. And I think also the respect that he has for Lance at the same time, because his son was racing in Formula 3 same time, Lance was. So Adrian understands like how talented, Lance is. And
yeah, you mentioned it.
Yeah. So, I mean, like that guy doesn't pull any punches, man. He gives it to you pretty straight. So having this driver lineup for him is something that, he really likes for sure. But I think Adam is his job is to give them something that they can use. At the moment, the car isn't very usable, and it's just not good at the moment.
Lawrence acknowledged that. He's like, yeah, we went the wrong way.
I mean, look, we've been talking about it on this podcast already, for a good part of this season of how that car's gone the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
So for Adrian to come in and kind of help them, right the ship and really dig his teeth into those 2026 regulations, I mean, in providing the drivers with a usable car, that's something to him that's very important, right? He wants to make sure he's giving the drivers what they need.
Right. And the feedback Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll's a vet in this sport, man. He's I think he's closing in on 200 races here. Like he's been around a long time. So the feedback he's going to be able to give, both of those drivers will be able to give is fantastic. Now, one of the things that I thought was a really interesting point that I didn't expect to come out of this press conference is Lawrence Stroll mentioning, first off, they moved into the building last Monday.
Yeah.
So quick turnaround, real quick turnaround for that press conference. Lawrence Barretto, friend of the show, got to ask the first question, and he said, have you picked your office yet? And Adrian said, no, I haven't, but I like to be in the middle of it all. And I think the third thing and the most important part is that wind tunnel that Aston Martin does not have yet is going to be operational by the end of the year. And that is going to be massive. 2025, you can tell, we want to do better. That's what they want. Their focus, though, truly, are the regulation changes in 2026. When that wind tunnel comes online, what is that going to do for them, Tim?
Well, it's going to take them to another level for sure. And it's just so state of the art. No one in Formula 1 is going to have a wind tunnel like this. I I never got to go and see it, so I thought it was crazy. I got to see everything in this factory, Adam,
Except for that building.
except for that wind tunnel, man. It's the only thing I didn't get to see. And actually, I didn't get to see the sim room either. So two things I didn't get to see when I was there. Those things were like top secret. So
Okay.
I mean, whatever they got going on in there, man, it sounds like it's. I mean, Newey had mentioned it a bunch of times. Like whatever they got going on in that wind tunnel is, I mean, extremely exciting to people who are working there and to other engineers who have worked with other teams and who have come over and like, been like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're talking. So I think whatever they got going on in there, man, it's a big deal. And Adrian really likes whatever it is. So, I mean, who knows? But it's definitely going to take the team to another level for sure. There's no question about that. No question.
There is a very famous scene in one of the seasons of Drive to Survive. I believe it's the third one where the Force India team goes into receivership. And receivership in British terms is bankruptcy court in Canadian and American terms.
Yeah.
And obviously the owner had financial difficulties in India. And so Otmar Safnauer, who was the team principal at that point, you could see him pull the people in the factory together. And it's a small factory. It's not a big group. And say, we're going into receivership. You will be paid this week, right? Like that is and we don't know what's going to happen after that. And so this team was purchased by Lawrence Stroll. Lance then moved over to Racing Point. He renamed it Racing Point, or BWT Racing Point, I believe was the sponsor at the time. And he has taken this team that on paper, Tim, wasn't worth anything. With the debt that it had incurred, even with the cars and the drivers and the personnel and the talent, and the buildings, and whatever else they owned, if you're in receivership, you're not worth anything. He goes and he buys this team. And as of today, we're expecting more investors to jump on board with the Aston Martin thing. So they're going to sell little pieces of it at a valuation of between 1.5 and 2 billion pounds, which in Canadian dollars is $3.5 billion. So that's a team that went from zero to 3.5 billion Canadian dollars, probably what, 2.5 billion American dollars in 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
That's quite the business venture.
Yeah.
That's astounding.
I know.
And you look at what Lawrence, and it comes down to Lawrence, right? He seems to be a facilitator of. By the way, did you know that Lawrence Stroll also put PGA and Live Golf together?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy that was like, you guys should merge. And he did it at his daughter's wedding. Crazy. What a crazy story. But this is a guy who brings, you said, he brought Hilfiger into Ferrari in the early 90s, right? Like this is, or early 90s, early 2000s. This is a guy that he got, the Aston Martin branding, and I believe he bought into Aston Martin, the actual road car company. He got Aramco on board with all of its capital, lots of money at Aramco. This is a guy that really is amazing at putting deals together. I don't think the sport's ever seen anything like this.
Got them making a synthetic fuel for them too.
Oh, see, this is the thing, man. Like this is a man who, and I want to touch on this as a Canadian. This is a Canadian guy. Yep. It's a Canadian-owned team. Yep. We don't talk about that in Canada at all. Like outside of this show and a couple others, like this is a huge Canadian businessman making huge moves, who's created several $1 billion of value in the last 5 years out of just his own sort of connections and guile, really. Yeah. It's amazing.
Oh, dude, it's incredible. I mean, I think he bought, I'm trying to remember exactly what the numbers were he bought Force India for. I think it was about $117 million, I think it was.
That's less than Williams.
Yeah, and now you see how much it's like the evaluation could be of it if I guess these two investors jump on board. Pretty staggering, right, Adam? Like to see
astounding
how you can take something from but in such a short amount of time. I think it says a couple of different things. One, it's it's a great business venture by Lawrence, but two, it's how well and healthy Formula One is at the same time. And so you have those two things kind of working together, which is, I mean, it's pretty unheard of. Like
oh yeah,
I don't never really heard of a company or a business being turned around that fast and to be worth as much as it is now. Yeah, and I think also moving, buying a bit more land, that helps to build that new factory to kind of take down the old Jordan factory, the old Force India factory, and to build something that's sort of like state of the art. I mean, that also helps as well. There's just so many other little things that you take all these. I don't want to call them minor; they're pretty massive, but like you take all these little things and they all add up at the end of the day, right, Adam?
One of the thoughts, Tim, that was raised or has been raised already is, as much as we've talked about Max Verstappen to Mercedes, at the end of 2026 or whatever, where he's out of contract and now in 2026, as much as it's not a very long time, it's eons in Formula One. Every week feels like a year in terms of news, especially this season. It's been crazy. I want to know, does Adrian Newey and Fernando Alonso being there, and maybe Fernando at that point is ready to go. Really appreciate it, but I'm 45 and might want to go. Although, knowing Fernando, he'll go till he's 50. Does that make a driver of the caliber of Max Verstappen, and that can be Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris? They're obviously not on Max's level. Those guys who have signed long-term deals, but there's always out clauses. Does that make Aston Martin one of those teams you're like, I got to be there? That's a got to race 14.
Yeah, definitely is going to attract more drivers for sure. The cream of the crop, right, are going to want to race there, just so they can work with Adrian, right? Because like I said, I mean, he wants to make sure he's building fast race cars for drivers. That's what he wants to do. So I think, Adam, like, I still feel that, Toto is going to push hard to get Max for 2026. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel anyways. But that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if Max comes knocking on the Aston Martin door, next year or the year after.
Do you think that this means Aston Martin have got to be considered an early challenger for 26, 27, 28 for world championship status? Do you expect to see them in the top three?
It's hard to say, right? Like, I think,
yeah, it's an unfair question.
It's tough. It's a tough one to answer, right? It's so far into the future, and we just don't even know what the regulation is going to actually even look like. We're still waiting on that one, like everybody else. But I think, Adam, it's like if he gets it, let's just say they get it wrong in 2026. 2027, 2028, they're going to get it right because they've got this guy, right? Mm-hmm. So that is where you're going to see him make the difference, is when you're kind of going down sort of the wrong path, he's able to kind of like bring you back,
right,
and put you onto the right path. So I don't necessarily think, well, I shouldn't say this, but I think it'll be interesting to see if his influence is felt in the 2025 car later in the season. Because he doesn't start there until, whatever, March 1st, March 2nd. But by that time, we're already going to have cars on the track. So, your car is already your car's already built. It's ready to go. It's going. So your philosophy is kind of already developed. It's whether or not, if that philosophy sort of has issues, that maybe he can kind of come in and point some things out for 2025 during the season, and maybe they can come with some fixes later.
It'd be nice to have 5 challengers for the championship next year. I'm just saying, it'd be great for business. It'd be great for us.
It'd be awesome. I think it's gonna be tough for Aston Martin next season, but we'll see. But yeah, obviously the main focus, like we had said, is 2026. But if you take a look at RB18, so the car that was built for this regulation that we're in, and it wasn't the fastest car to start. That went to Ferrari.
Yep.
Right. And that's a championship they could possibly have won.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2022. But that car is the reason we got RB19.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the RB18, which Adrian Newey That's his, and then he helped them evolve it for the next season. Then we don't get that RB19 car that's just absolutely ridiculous, right? So like, even if like they are not the fastest straight out of the blocks, they're still gonna have him, which is he'll help them evolve it to another level.
Is there anything to the fact that Adrian Newey's departure from Red Bull has coincided with the fact that everybody's caught up with them? Like, is there anything to that? Is that, people are pointing that out, and I know that the lead time for engineering in Formula One is so much longer than anybody expects.
Yes, but also I think he, like, the issues that they're having now, I think it like, this is a point where he would make the difference.
Right.
Like, he would be the guy to be able to come in and say, like, you're doing this wrong and we're going too far here. We need to go back to here to get up to here. Like, he would be that guy who helps him pivot or helps him get back on track. Because you also have to remember that RB18 was the one that he had his fingers all over. RB19, he still had his fingers all over that. And then RB20, he still was overseeing that car as well. And when that car started the season, it was a runaway. We were in for a runaway, Adam, right? And then
we were.
And then in April, he leaves, and then McLaren shows up with that incredible upgrade the same week that he leaves Red Bull, and then McLaren,
and they're still using it.
Yeah, McLaren closes that gap.
Yeah,
and then Red Bull tries to take a step, but they can't. Right? Instead of taking a step forward, they took a step back.
Right.
So they've lost their way with aerodynamics somewhere, and he's your guy who can, like, come in and help you get back on the right track, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think they'll have him do anything on the 24 car, or just say, forget it, it is what it is?
Well, he can't do anything, right? Like, he can't
until Jan 1st?
Yeah, he can't work for the team until March 1st.
Oh, March 1st. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So the 25 car is what it is then.
Exactly. So whatever we're going to get from that, we're going to get from that. And then, like I said, if they've gone in a direction that, I don't know, he's able to come in and say, like, hey, you got to go this way. Maybe he has, like, some small influence on it.
Right. Okay. Tim, what, when you look at this, and obviously as an insider yourself, what things about this deal, about this program, about this situation do you think people maybe don't know enough, that we haven't covered? Things that maybe aren't out there as much as perhaps they should be, things of interest for you? Because I know as a driver, you look at things differently than, us as fans do. So, what is it for you?
I think, like, watching this guy develop a race car.
Yeah.
That for me is, like, extremely fascinating. Like, I don't know, we were in Bahrain this year, and I think I sent you the picture.
Yes. Thank God it made it through, because that Wi-Fi was pretty spotty.
Like, this guy is, like, so invested, though, right, Adam? Like, he was, like, underneath the Red Bull, and we got that. Somebody got the picture of him at the right moment where he's just, like, all, like, his face is like, It's an awesome picture. But that just shows you the level, to which that guy's prepared to go to, right? He's working underneath a Formula One car at 65 years old. Like,
that's amazing.
I mean, yeah. Come on, like, so that to me, Adam, is what has me really excited. But then also seeing, like, Lance and Fernando get a car that, I don't want to say anything bad about, like, what the guys have done already, like Dan Fallows and Eric Blondin, their whole team, but having an Adrian Newey there is definitely going to help them have a more drivable race car. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. Right. Wow, Tim.
That's exciting, right, Adam? I mean, this is a big day. It was big news. I mean, knew about this for a little while. So kind of been biting my tongue on it for a lot. And, was up at 5:00 this morning to be able to make sure I got on the press conference and put the news out and stuff. So Did
you ask any questions through TikTok?
No, I don't need to. Yeah, I can't believe that. I think maybe that's an interesting point. I wonder if that has to be some sort of a sponsorship deal because I
Well,
think
it's
TikTok
they're a
sponsors
car
it, right?
sponsor, so
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
TikTok's doing a lot. Like they just in North America here, they became the jersey sponsor of the Washington Capitals yesterday, which we all found funny because I don't know if you've seen the hearing in Washington where the Republicans went at the owner of TikTok, and he's like, have you ever worked for the Chinese government? Are you Chinese? The guy's like, I'm Singaporean. Sir, I'm Singaporean. I'm from Singapore. I have a Singapore pass. Like it's a crazy video that's out there. So it's hilarious that they bought the NHL team rights in DC.
Huh.
But yeah, they're. I mean, they were the Leafs helmet sponsor in Toronto a few
Mhm.
years ago during the pandemic. Like they're very much in the sports landscape, and they should be, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, Tim, I love days like today because the best part about Formula One is that it always changes. The torch always passes. And there's a lot of teams, my favorite team among them, that for too long have sat on their history
Mhm.
and have not made the best of what today is. I think McLaren is doing a good job of that now.
Mhm.
Ferrari, it's been way too long for Ferrari to not win a championship.
Mhm.
And then this new competitor comes in and goes, yeah, I think we're going to take one in the next 3 or 4 years. Like that is what this sport needs, and it's amazing. And I love what's happening. I can't imagine a more exciting time in Formula One, honestly,
Yeah.
since I've been watching, just because of the parity.
Man, it's been great. We've had so much. I mean, this year has been especially fantastic.
Yes.
Because starting everything off with the Gunther Steiner leaving Haas, and then we ventured into Norris, Leclerc signing these massive deals with their team, and then boom, Lewis Hamilton comes out of nowhere.
It's hard to imagine that all happened this year. Like that was all a part of this calendar
I
year.
know, it's crazy, right? Like it's just been fantastic, man. And then the racing on the track has been incredible. So we've been spoiled. Like this is great stuff. I mean,
and we're seeing Mattia Binotto replace Andrea Seidel, who just got there, and Mattia Binotto is now on the track side with the Stake F1 shirt on, and it looks weird. Like it's nuts, man. It's nuts.
Oh, dude, it's been incredible. See, we're not even finished. I mean, we still have Lando Norris potentially winning this championship this year. We still have McLaren winning their first constructors championship in forever. I mean,
forever. Yeah,
it's exciting times. If you're a hardcore F1 fan, I mean, this is peak F1. We are I don't know if next year the racing is going to be incredible. The championships are going to be incredible. Probably something we've never seen before.
Yep.
The off-track stuff, I don't know if it'll be as juicy as this though.
Hard to compete with this, right?
This has been to see a guy at Adrian Newey's level, a lifer at Red Bull, we all thought, just all of a sudden, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm leaving. And then that team just going
whew, yeah. Instantly, Tim. From that race.
Wild.
It's wild. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think there's one thing that I want, because going into this year, I remember when we did our little preview, I said, do you think there's a chance that Lewis Hamilton can at least win one more race with Mercedes? And we got it, and that was cool. And it was Silverstone. You couldn't have written it better.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
And he's beating out another British team and another British driver to do it. It's great. It's amazing. I'm dying for one other thing. If I can ask one thing of the universe, and it doesn't have to be this year, I want Fernando Alonso desperately to be the oldest driver ever to win a Formula One race.
Oh,
I desperately want that.
That would be insane.
We might have to wait till 2026 for it to happen.
Oh, that'd be so awesome.
But Tim, can you imagine?
Oh, I think I'd lose my marbles.
I think the whole F1 world would. Can you imagine this? You thought the Lando Norris celebration was great.
Yeah.
Wait till Fernando wins another race. That's going to be crazy.
Oh man, I think the roof will blow off the Aston Martin, technology center.
Yeah.
It'd be wild, man. I think that's all we need, right? We need we've had 7 different drivers win so far this season.
Yeah.
You get Sergio in there, that'll make 8.
Yeah.
And then you add 2 more. I mean, holy hell! Like,
It'd be great. It'd be great. By the way, for the people who have been there since, I mean, I'm sure there are employees left over from Jordan, but even from the Force India days, what a change in their circumstance. They must be absolutely blown away by what's happened around them, and I feel happy for them.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how much a lot of those employees like went through.
Oh,
uh, Not knowing whether or not you were going to have a job, but not knowing whether or not you were going to get paid that week. Like, it's so much turmoil,
yeah,
like internally, um, and like still just really punch above their weight, like
yeah,
big
and
time
they always
punch
did.
above their weight.
They
Yeah,
always did.
with
They
very
always did.
little. I mean, I think Andy Green and the guys who were there, who were working on those cars back then, did a tremendous job to build cars with what they had, which wasn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I thought that was a team I always was like really kind of rooted for because they were such underdogs, right?
Yeah,
And to see where they were to where they've come to now, I mean, it's been pretty impressive. I mean, that's a huge that's a huge turnaround, right?
yes,
Like as a business and as a sporting property.
absolutely. Well, Tim,
Impressive.
we'll be back on Thursday to preview the race, but what an exciting morning! And I can't wait to see all the fallout from this. And of course, there is driver news to talk about. There are rumors on the paddock, but we'll save that for Thursday's show. And because sometimes when the rumor happens, you don't want to be the first one on it. You want to kind of wait and see how it all plays out. There's one driver I'm specifically thinking about who went from 22 to first the other weekend, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that on Thursday. And Tim, thanks so much for all your insights.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Appreciate it, buddy.